Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to the weekly Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, as always, Phil Bryant, joined with my regular co-host, the excellent Ian Rhodes, on this Monday, of course, after United's defeat at Brighton. I had to drag that from my mouth. Disappointing result. Lots going on, of course, as well right now, with players coming in, players going out. What have you? Well, hopefully players coming in. Definitely players going out. I'll get my colleagues' response here on the Brighton game and some of the other Manchester United news. And, of course, we'll take a look ahead to the very important Liverpool game this weekend. First of all, how was your weekend, mate?
Yeah, it was pretty good otherwise. I mean, that was the first 5:30 a.m. game that I woke up for my time, and somehow those tend to be some of the worst games United play. I mean, I know that in general, the early kickoff is not the best game for teams to play, but it was a rough one. But otherwise not a bad weekend in general. This good stuff with the family and all of that. How about you?
It wasn't too bad actually because I didn't have a lot to do this weekend, which was great. So I had I actually didn't get to bed on Saturday night because I was up. So I ended up. It's 4:30 my time, so it's like one and
Yeah.
if I go to bed now, I'm not getting up, and I went to bed after it. But yeah, look, disappointing result. What was interesting was there was more positivity on social media than what I expected.
Yeah.
Performance was definitely better all around than what we've seen from United at Brighton. I would argue even better than the performance last day in the last season when they won there. But
Yes.
they still lost, and there are lots of reasons to be positive, but there are also some reasons to be concerned. And I'll be honest, I'm getting fed up with this feeling of United losing games late. There are some teams have an identity that psychological identity that gets reinforced. They find ways to win late. They always trust themselves to find a way to win. They control games. They control tempo in games because they always trust that a chance will come and they'll take it. And then there are other teams that are really nervy late in games that can find a way to lose or throw points away. And if you go back to, I hate to do this, but the Wolves game last season, at the start of last season, United almost found a way to lose that game. 1-0 at home. And Onana probably should have given a penalty away. If you look at the statistics, James, on United conceding goals late in just 2 years under Ten Hag, they've done it 6 times in the 90th minute. It's happened twice in the 20 years previous to that. That was a stat being circulated by Opta.
Yep.
That's not an accident, my friend.
No, it isn't. And I think there's things to be positive about, but for me, we talked about this a while back on the podcast about things, and there's a lot of ways you could pin this. That back four that was on the pitch, it's not the players that people wanted to blame last year for this issue. It was De Ligt, Mazraoui, Dallo, and Lisandro Martinez at that time. All people of very sound mind, leadership, good.
Three of them are Ten Hag's players.
Yeah, and Onana and goal, right? So 4 former Ajax players out of that back 5. But they're also players who I think have strong mentalities. When you know what you know about them, they're players who tend to have good positive traits mentally, focus-wise. I mean, Dallo has his moments, but I don't think he was actually at fault for this one at all. But there's another issue, and it permeates, I think, the entire game. And I think it's still what's wrong with the team, no matter what is positive and what is negative. It kind of, and it starts with this, because we saw this last season. Ten Hag has a tendency to, I think, it has to do with how we attack and how we go forward. Almost all our problems start with going forward. When I watched the goal, conceding that late goal, Casemiro instantly ready to spring into the counter. So when the ball gets deflected or bounces out, he's running out of the box, ready to go into the attack, straight into the counter. We've got to get up the pitch as quick as possible and transition, and then he's out of position and not covering the player at the back post. And there you see that from the other forwards too. None of them are in the box. None of them are defending the set piece like it's their life to control this, because their whole focus and the whole pattern, the whole thought process, the entire game was, how do we get up the pitch as quick as possible? And we did the same thing in attack the entire game, and it's waste, and it loses control. You know, those games where you would see teams that are trying to chase a win that are sat around the opponent's box, trying to find the angle, trying to find the angle, trying to find the angle. That's what City will do, what Arsenal do. That's what Liverpool do. It's even Tottenham what they'll do. You watch them. We don't. It's constant, chaotic attack, all out. As soon as we get it, we've got to go quick, quick, quick. And some of that's on the players, being the type of people that they are, that their profile of characteristics, the way that they play. And some of it's on Ten Hag. But to me, it throws off everything else you want to do when your first priority is to get up the pitch as quick as possible, and it creates other problems. That's one of the major things I see personally.
I think there's a couple of things here. I think one, United are still very much a counter-attacking team.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you don't become a team that dominates games, it controls possessions, it controls tempo until you get a couple of things. Until one, you start getting consistency in your lineup, because then players, start trusting each other. You start having patterns of play. You have cohesion. You almost have a telepathic understanding of where players are going to be. So you don't have organizational issues, because players already know where they need to be, and that there's an understanding. So when you're constantly changing your players, you need to bring in Delict. Bringing in centre backs is very risky.
Yeah.
Okay, because you bring in midfielders, forwards to change games, what have you. But I can understand why he's doing it, because he wants to get Delict fit. But it's risky.
Yeah,
Secondly, the most the biggest impediment to controlling games, controlling tempo, and controlling possession is conceding goals later on, because you're always nervy, and the psychological impact of that is very difficult to overcome in training. Like, you can only be overcome in games. So United can't do that yet. So their entire game is built around hit you on the break quickly. And the most difficult transition comes from that into being a team that controls possession and controls tempo. You also have to have exceptional quality in midfield. That you have to be better than the opposition. I didn't understand the Bruno Fernandes change. Right. That was odd to me. I don't think he did either. And I'm going to say something here that's not going to be extremely popular, but I think Lisandro Martinez had a poor game, James.
Both games,
I think that Maguire's at fault for the first goal, because the ball should be cleared. No question. He's coming over his shoulder. I think Onana needs to tell him to clear it. I don't know if he got a shot or not. I don't think Martinez was exceptionally well positioned as well for that first goal, because Maguire has his back to Welbeck, so he can't see him, but Martinez can't. So Martinez has to see that Welbeck, if this ball comes across, he's got to be closer to him, in my opinion. And for the second goal, that's where Martinez needs to organize, because he's the left centre back, so he's on the left-hand side. So he has to look over his left shoulder and see what's there and make sure United have adequate coverage. Now, I know it came from a corner, so Dalla was on the other side. But to all be caught on that side of the field is a communication leadership problem. That's where someone's got to be screaming, going, back post, here, here, here. The other thing is, James, where did the Onana go that was screaming at Maguire in pre-season?
I know.
Because
it's just for show.
Why is Onana screaming?
Yeah.
Coverage at the back post. I mean, remember Schmeichel, all the United goalkeepers, communication. Where's that communication?
Yep.
And he's stuck on his line. Why isn't he telling players to get back post? Why isn't he? He's the one player that's looking at the play from an advantageous position, because he can see everything.
Yep.
Now, the way United pressed that ball was childish. Really, really, at any level of football, that is an unforgivable goal to concede.
Yep.
If someone hits you with a 30-yard pinger in the last minute and it flies in the top corner, okay, there's nothing you can do about that. They're a worldie. But
Yep.
that goal should not be conceded at this level. And I know people can say, well, Ten Hag's Joe, it's not him, it's not him. Okay, what do we make Ten Hag responsible for then?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's not him, and I agree that professional footballers shouldn't have enough common sense to not make those type of mistakes. But what do we hold him accountable for if these
Yeah.
things are not him? The other issue is James, just aren't scoring enough goals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the Xerxes one should count because to me, if he gets an advantage by putting the ball in the goal, it wasn't going. In other words, he's offside to me. If the ball's
Yeah.
flying in there anyway, I don't see what the point is of disallowing it. There's no advantage
Yeah.
came from hitting Xerxes. It didn't interfere with the goalkeeper. Didn't interfere with any of the play whatsoever.
Yep.
So for me, but okay, these are technicalities. But again, the problem comes from not scoring enough goals. United are
Right.
2-3-1 up on that game. It's over.
Yep.
Ahmad should have scored. Maybe should have had a penalty. Remember, Welbeck hit the bar too, just
Yep.
before that. And it's like, okay, you've just lost to a coach in the second game. You have another coach next weekend. That if you lose this game next weekend, James, he is
Mm-hmm.
under enormous pressure to
Yeah.
lose to someone like Arne Slot. And but far be it from me to give Slot any type of credit, but he was saying something about one of the biggest differences between Jurgen Klopp and him, and it was about risk reward football.
Yeah.
About Liverpool being too open because we were constantly looking for that passing behind and knowing when to just control the game, settle down, and not constantly turn over possession by. And lastly, my friend Anthony is also at fault for that last goal.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. And look, but the thing is, it's kind of that the comment by Arne Slot on that and that whole point is to me the crux of the Ten Hag problem in our attack. We spent the entire game getting up to Brighton's line and then hitting it over, hitting it through, chipping it long, trying to get in behind. And it is not sustainable and it creates those transitions. And the other thing that it does is if you watch the difference between the first game and the second game, where in the first game I thought we did it a lot better, and you watch it in the second game, where we conceded, in my opinion, a lot more chances in general. Aside from Traore running through the team, which happens all the time, I really don't think we gave up anything to Fulham for most of the game in week one. But in week two, I thought they had a lot of better chances against us. When you watch the differences, when Liverpool lose possession, their center backs are in the opposition half and they're ready to win the ball back quickly and make the pitch very, very small, very, very tight. And the gaps are not there. And we saw this last year. When we lose the ball, especially in this game, our center backs are still halfway into our own half. So then the gaps are really big. And we know they can do it, but it's in part because if you build up really fast and just try to score immediately, you're not giving the time for your team to move up and take the opposition's space away from them and to take that sort of territory away from the other team. And I mean, it's almost like, in American football, gaining field position, you get the ball further and further up and then you punt it away from the 40. It's better than punting it away from your own goal line. And you can control the game that way, where even if you lose it, you're in a much better position because you've dominated more of the space of your opponent. And obviously, it's much more fluid than in that, but it's quite similar. And in game one, I thought we did it really well. We were pressing high, but when we attacked, we actually let the center backs get into the half and they were passing it around and controlling it and moving it. So when we lost it, it was short and we were ready to win it back. And now it's in this game is the opposite. Our line was as deep as the lowest average line of any team last season in that game yesterday. And that is not because defensively we're trying to defend with a deep line. It's because when we build it out the back, we go long after we build it up. And then they're sat back there when we lose the ball. They can't get up the pitch. Otherwise, they're just sprinting towards halfway for no reason. So it's to me, it's like it's possession problems, not scoring enough goals and trying to solve that create all these other problems. Like you said, if you're scoring goals consistently and controlling the game, you prevent a lot of these other things from happening. And we're not doing that, and we're not controlling the ball and creating and scoring with like these, the patterns and the things you want to see over and over and over again, to where you get consistency. And I think no matter what we do off the ball, no matter how energetic, no matter how much we press, no matter who's in the team, until that happens and we're in control of the ball when we have it, it's really, unfortunately, like what Arne Slot said, it's just too risky. The risks are just going to keep being there.
The ironic thing is that when United equalised, Brighton were having a really good spell.
Mm-hmm.
United equalise, and that goal completely changes the game. Now all of a sudden, United are on the front foot. They look like they're going to score. That's where, of course, the Garnacho chance comes from, what have you. But when you look back on it, we're talking about an OG here, because I don't think that ball was going in.
No, I was maybe the post. Like, it was really close. Really close.
It wasn't an exceptionally powerful shot, and it looked like the keeper had it covered to me. But we're still talking about an OG here.
Yeah.
So when we'd see last season United would score and win games late, you were always thinking, is this a turning point? Is this now we get momentum? And then they go out and lose the next game. And this is what they just done. Yeah. And, you can sit here and talk about, it's a great performance, better performance and stuff. Well, it was hard to get much worse than that. United have played at Brighton over the years, right? And anytime United have beaten Brighton over the last 2 years, it hasn't been pretty. Yeah. And remember, we're still talking about Brighton here, James.
I know. Well,
decent team, but it's not Arsenal. It's not Liverpool. It's not City.
Yeah. Just on that exact point for me, I think that for myself, the one thing I want to see change, and where I think we have a real weakness, is we cannot change our game based on the opposition all the time and do something different. Especially not for Brighton, and it's okay in cup games when you're trying to win tournament football and you're playing one-off games against big teams. But we change our game, and that's why our away record is so bad. We'll play against very mediocre sides, mid-table teams, and change just because we're playing the opposition instead of playing our game. And that, to me, is not a big club way of operating, and that is one of the things that I'd like to see change a lot.
I think in Ten Hag's defense there, one of the problems is consistency in the lineup. And so, so it's really hard to have a consistent style of play when the players you have available are constantly changing, that can't play that particular way. So you sort of have to accommodate them in certain ways. So I do somewhat sympathize with him. And if you look at that defense at the weekend, they conceded that last goal. I mean, Mazraoui, Delict, or there's 2 out of that 4 have barely played. But is this the right? I understand he wants to get them fit for Liverpool. He wants to get them fit, get them on the field, and the only way to do that is game time. But to make it a centre back defensive change with 15 minutes to go, in a game where you have only conceded 1 goal, that's unusual. And there are certain positions in a team you never want to change. The centre back pairing or positions you never want to change. And Ten Hag is a little bit of an issue there because Maguire's been playing really well. Now, I know he was at fault for the first goal, but he otherwise had a decent game.
Yep. Besides
and how does he get Delict in this team without taking these types of risks?
Yep.
I don't know. They might have conceded the goal anyway if Maguire was on the pitch because there wasn't just one player unmarked at the back. I mean, every time I look at that goal, I can't believe it happened. I simply can't believe the catalogue of errors that took place in that, so many. But James, even on the first goal, and I'll go back to something that I believe firmly in my heart, United need a left back.
Okay? I completely agree with you. I think it's actually one of the biggest problems is still Dalot's uncomfortableness and his footedness there.
Well, he doesn't press the ball. He's very good with Mente running at him, and he was excellent. But there's too much. When you're a fullback and you don't have lightning pace, and you're squared up against the winger, you'll stand off him because you're afraid of getting the ball knocked past you, right, and getting done for pace down the line. So you take a risk with the cross because you think, okay, if the cross comes in, I've still got my centre backs, we've still got another players here that will clear the ball. Still, higher risk, but we should still be able to deal with that. But I don't want to get done on a 1-on-1. So you'll see defenders stand off about a yard off wingers, and there's no pressure on the ball. The cross comes in, and I seen United do this a lot last season. I remember McAllister scoring at Old Trafford. No pressure on the ball,
Yeah.
just allowed to walk through. So many times I saw this last season, and we were talking, oh, this is because the centre of the midfield is open, where players are getting all the space to run in unchallenged. By the way, I'm not going to sit here and criticize Ten Hag the whole time because I do think there's a lot of positives, but I have to be honest. These are things he has to be responsible for. These are things that I'm already tired of, not the result we wanted, but I'm already done with it. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to hear this anymore. And you can sit there after a game and point that this shouldn't have happened, this shouldn't have happened, this shouldn't have happened. Great, and I fix it because I don't want to hear it next week.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so
Well, yeah.
that I'm anyway. It's just to me
No,
like
I hear
that
it. I hear
second
it.
goal is so bad.
And look, this is why people can't say it's a clean slate and it's a start over and it's year one of Ten Hag, because it's not. It just isn't. And part of the problem here is that I saw a very big divide on this, where you had a lot of people kind of policing, fans who are kind of have their doubts on Ten Hag by saying it's week two. But if you remember the end of last season, the polls, the things that went around prior to the FA Cup, most fans wanted to change the manager prior to that. Afterwards, most fans wanted to keep the manager. The problem is the glow of winning the FA Cup ends the moment you lose your first game of the season the next year. It's over. The FA Cup is done. People forget about it, and that feeling goes away because you're watching the team right now and what they're producing. And winning the last game of the season for a trophy is a very good thing. But that feeling that you had at that time, that gives people a lot of time for Ten Hag, is mostly because you're not playing football. If that wasn't the last game of the year and United went and lost two more games afterwards, people wouldn't have been so positive. And that was why it's sort of, you have to watch that. But I think people have the right to feel either way about it. I'm not I don't want to get into a discussion about should the manager stay, go, this or that. But you have every right to criticize the problems that are there and that continue to be there, especially when you look at new managers who are in their first and second game, like the one we just played, and what they're doing. And yes, they may have some foundations, but they're still only in their second game. And so, it makes people, there's going to be a lot, it's going to be difficult, and we said this before, that Ten Hag has to get good results this year. He did not get a new contract. They did not agree to terms on this. By the end of this season, they're going to have to look at it in the same position we were in at the end of last season. And unfortunately, that does mean pretty much every game Ten Hag is on trial at United as the coach. And that was the unfortunate part about him not agreeing a new contract, which I kind of wish wasn't the case. I wish he had. I've said that before. I didn't love this situation because he is under pressure every single game. He is being tested and measured by every game that happens, because they still have to make a decision at the end of this season whether he stays or goes.
I don't think he'll get to the end of the season. There's no way they'll give him to the end of the season, James, if he's having a somewhat similar season to last season. There's no way. And nor should they. Listen, you're talking. I'm a guy that has defended him virulently.
Yeah.
From the majority of last season, I could not really hold him accountable for the majority of things that were happening. And I defended him. And I believed that after the cup final, he should have been kept on and given this season. Am I certain? No. And people have every right to have questions regarding him, because the fact of the matter is he does have a lot of questions to answer this season.
Yeah.
And this is his team.
Yeah.
And one of the hardest things, James, to accomplish is psychological trust, because players, just like everyone else in every other company, will blame you for failure. Your boss, always. And when you're taking off people like Bruno Fernandes, who are absolutely key to your success on the field, because he's a captain of the football club.
Yep.
The thing you can see in United players' faces yet is that they don't completely trust those methods that they're adhering to that will produce results. Now, if you're working
Right.
for someone that is a hard taskmaster, that has very little give when it comes to, I don't want to team building stuff. It's very rigid. It's very disciplined. Players will do that if you win,
Yep.
if you get results. But if you are asking them to do that and they can't see the payoff, they'll give up on it. And this
Yep.
is where Ten Hag really, really has to. This is the thing that concerns me is that where United are at right now, and I know it's only 2 games, so you don't need to overreact. But for a lot of these players, it's not just 2 games.
Correct.
Okay,
That's
for
the
these
point. Yeah.
players, this was a continuation of last season, the season
Yep.
before that, and the season before that.
Yep.
So it might just be 2 games of this season for fans, but this is these players' third season under Ten Hag.
Yep.
Maybe their first season under Ineos, but it's their third season under Ten Hag. And to think that the first 2 seasons aren't relevant to this one is absurd. The first one was actually the reason why I kept this job, in my opinion, in the
Yes.
second season.
Yes.
So it was
Yep.
relevant. And is probably the reason why he's in this job right now.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
so he has to impress Ineos who didn't hire him.
Yep.
Right. So you want to be my guy? You have the job. This is Manchester United. You would not get away with this anywhere else. And I think that considering they'll almost be very confident they'll get a Ugarte done. James, I'm sorry, like
a lot.
The team that should be comfortably inside the top 4.
Yep.
Comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
And this type of stuff, throwing games away stupid late with the most absurd goals that shouldn't even happen at this level, it cannot be allowed to continue. So Ten Hag is already in must-win territory.
Mm-hmm.
He is. I'm sorry. If he loses to Liverpool this weekend, oh my God, he is going to get slaughtered. And I don't care if United are amazing and they lose 1-0 by a last-minute goal. It won't matter.
Yeah.
Okay. If they lose this weekend, that would be 2 defeats out of 3 to 2 managers who have just started in their jobs. James, I'm sorry. That is, and we've got international break. I wouldn't sack him. I don't think he will get sacked, but that is really serious.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they will assess it by the international break after that to see where things are at. And, the pressure mounts. And, part of it is that, again, he's got to impress, the team have to impress. And there's players who are playing for the future there too, bearing in mind, it's not just a discussion about the manager and all of that. The players who are at United are playing for the future. Bruno Fernandes only got a 1-year extension in the first place. He has to have a good season. I think he's been pretty poor so far. Marcus Rashford has definitely not had a good first couple of games so far. A lot of players need to pick it up themselves also 100%. And to have a future at this club, and without a doubt. Now, the other thing, just in talking about that substitution, which I think leads into a somewhat of a relevant point, because it's something you and I have been discussing. It's something I said I've kind of passed along as earlier in the window, and it sometimes becomes unfortunate that tend to share things that almost always are a bit negative on Ten Hag at times, and it's not in the intention. But that Scott McTominay substitution for Bruno Fernandes probably was a pretty bad idea on a couple of fronts, because there's been, some discussion, differing of opinions on Scott McTominay within the club as well over the course of this summer in terms of what to do with him. Now, they've accepted a bid from, it came out the next morning, right? Or later that day. They've accepted a bid from Napoli for Scott McTominay for 30 million or just over 30 million. They've been trying to sell him all summer. Eric Ten Hag doesn't really want to sell him. And it's been a little bit of an issue that has caused a bit of conflict. It's one of the reasons it's taken so long to get Ugarte in the door, is some of the difference in opinions on how to approach the midfield and transfers and things like that. This is one of the situations Ineos had wanted to avoid. It's also one of the reasons why there is no new contract, is because of a difference of opinion on what the job entails and clauses and all the things that would have gone into a new contract that would have changed certain things that are in there right now. But it's just a challenging thing, because these are the things where if it works, if you're going to have a different opinion as the manager than the people running things, then you're going to have to succeed with it. You're going to have to win with the decisions
100%.
that you make. And that was, I don't know, for him, I think it was a little bit ill-advised, especially that they ended up losing right after that substitution, because it's a subject that has had some discussion. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that I have two opinions on that. I can certainly understand a manager staying loyal to his principles and saying, if I'm going to succeed or feel at this football club, it will be on my principles. Once you start enforcing, so this is where it gets a bit tricky for me, because once he starts getting, his authority gets usurped and he's getting players pushed on him, then it becomes, okay, did Ten Hag fail or did Ineos fail?
Yeah.
And this is Ineos's job to make sure that they remove any doubt and to remove any excuses and say this is a manager's failure. Now, in saying that, it's very rare at any football club that a manager gets to select every player that gets sent.
Yep.
They ask for players with a particular profile, a particular skill set, and then the clubs usually go out and get players. And the manager is also consulted, of course. But
yes, of course,
very rare. I mean, most clubs, James, have to compromise all the time. It's kind of like, I don't know, going out shopping with a $30,000 budget for a car.
Yeah,
you can't.
You can want what you want, but
customized vehicle that you want. You have to make a few compromises here and a few compromises there.
You walk. And what's available? What do they got?
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
what's in stock?
I want these rims, but I'm gonna have to accept it, right?
Yeah.
Now you go out shopping me $500,000. You can pick anyone you want, and you can have it look exactly as you want. And you can customize it however you want.
Oh.
So when you're going to the market, like most clubs are like, okay, well, it's not perfect, but we'll make this work. This is not fair. So when you're doing that, it's very rare that Ten Hag's ever going to find himself. He never found himself in that situation at Ajax, right, where he could pick whoever he wanted. And there's very rare, almost nowhere else he will get that. So I can understand him pushing back a little bit, because you still want to make sure you sign players that you want and they're consistent with your principles. But I also understand the club saying, hey, well, hang on a minute. If you get sacked in 3 months, we're stuck with these players.
Yep.
And we want to make sure that the next guy comes in generally agrees with what we're trying to do. So I can see both sides of that. On the Scott McTominay thing, brought this up last week. We said his body language didn't look great when he scored against Fulham. Looks like a lad that's torn, wants to stay, but recognizes the situation he's in. And look, Ten Hag likes him. I found the change that he made to be a bit strange, in the sense that are you looking to defend more, or are you looking to attack more? Because if you're looking to defend more, okay. But the reason why United conceded that goal is because they were desperately trying to push forward.
Yep.
If you're looking to attack more, would Casemiro have not been the right player to take off? Yep. I don't know. So I'm not quite sure what Ten Hag was thinking there. Look, James, I think Ten Hag is a very. If this was his first year in United, where he hadn't had the other two, I think he would be getting a better response from the players. But I'm not sure the players trust him.
Yeah.
And this is the hardest part that he has to overcome. And this is part of the reason why I think he targets his ex-players at Ajax, where he had his most success, because those players do trust him. And if you listen to the De Ligt, statement when he first signed, it was all about the fact that Ten Hag was the guy that developed him, that he wanted to come back to him. It was essentially a player that had a point to prove, but also how happy he was to be playing for Ten Hag again. I think this is one of the reasons why he targets those players, is because those players trust him. And a lot of the players, he wants to get that dynamic, obviously, in the changing room. But, I'm not certain that some key players in that changing room completely trust him.
Yeah, yeah, and understandably, and there's been a hell of a lot of turnover in the squad this summer, which I think is a good thing in a lot of respects. There's been a lot of departures. There's been a lot of movement, between the free agents initially with Martial and Varane leaving, and a lot of players coming in. And he should be able to. I mean, that's why we say, it's his team. They've got to get results now. The other thing that I think definitely needs changing, and it is challenging. It did change, and at the halftime this time, was Mason Mount coming off for Joshua Zirkzee.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got to start moving forward Joshua Zirkzee into the team as a striker. I think this dual tens Bruno Mount thing is just it's not, it doesn't work anymore. It's really not great. It's not great. It has its moments, but it's not working like you'd want it to, especially with the ball. And you have to get Joshua Zirkzee going. I think he was quite unlucky on that goal, unfortunately, because Bruno probably should have hit him with the pass originally, and he's coming across trying to get it, and then ends up in the way of Garnacho. So a bit unlucky in the whole instance, regardless of the rule. The whole thing was a bit unlucky. Yeah, it's like there's nothing you can really do there, because he's going for the pass from Bruno in the first place, and it just goes beyond him just a little bit, and then he's running full tilt. But you got to get him going. You got to get him going and into the team, because it's a big part of, obviously doing a semi-false 9.5 striker thing is clearly the way we want to play and the way we're going moving forward. And he's the best player for it. He brings a calmness and a control on the ball that I don't think we see from other players that I think would help a lot. And that's one thing I think would make a big difference, is having him in from the start to control things a bit more.
Say something on that, James.
Yeah.
One of the things that annoys me about that type of play, I said it before the game, about the fact that United lack numbers in the box, is that United's two wide players still stay really wide.
Yes.
So when you're knocking that ball over the top, you're knocking it into a channel, not in the middle of the field. Yep. So even if your winger picks the ball up, they still have a lot of work to do. Where are they picking the ball up? They're picking the ball up in positions. Sometimes it's inverted where they're picking it up, where they're running on goal, but a lot of times it's still pinged over the top, and by the time they pick the ball up, then turn, then go towards goal, centre backs will make ground on them. Yeah. And so for me, it's like the best time I saw United play that way. I know they did that a little bit against City, and the Vardiol mistake helped a lot, but the best time I said United played that way was against Luton away, when they had Hoyland down the middle. And they were playing ball on top, and they had a serious central threat. But Mount doesn't get in the box enough for me. And there's a big problem. I said this before last week, where I thought one criticism was United didn't have a lot of numbers in the box.
Yeah. I think that's where I think they really have to decide what they want to be, because I don't think the balls over the top work when you're not playing runners, like you say, with Rasmus Højlund down the middle. It's like kind of antithetical to the style. If you're sending it down wide, then you need people running into the box. But if you're playing with a false nine, then you're not getting those instant runs into the box. So then you've got to play it slow and control the ball a bit more. So that's where I say a lot of the problems to me stem from the attacking sides. Are you going to slow it down and control the game and let your overlaps happen and underlaps happen and let the fullbacks get involved so you have more numbers? Or are you going to go all in? Because if you're going all in, then forget Zirkzee. Put Garnacho there, put Rashford down the middle if Højlund isn't healthy. Just run. Just run. Just do Rashford and Garnacho up top. It doesn't even matter. Just do that. If you're just going to run. And that's where I think they really do have to decide what they're going to be. Because if they're going to slow it down with Zirkzee, then play that way, then really get into that. Because as you say, otherwise I think you will have that issue with the numbers in the box.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No. Yeah. I was going to transition as well, so go for it.
Yeah, let's talk about some ins and outs, of course. Story emerged yesterday about Chelsea being interested in Jadon Sancho. Now, as you and I have talked about on this podcast before,
Yep.
Chelsea tapped Sancho up last season,
Yep.
um, in the most bizarre way, which I'm not going to get into. But they had obviously had made an approach for him last summer, relatively late in the window, around about this time actually, and it never came off. I don't know how serious they are, if this is a repeat of the same thing that they did last season, but allegedly offering Chilwell and Sterling. Now, in my opinion, Raheem Sterling, if not, hasn't made any progress since he was 17. Right? When I watched him in that
Yeah.
Brendan Rodgers team at 17 at Liverpool, excellent winger, very fast, tremendous potential, but he never worked on his finishing. His finishing's still really poor. Still
Yes.
misses way too many chances. And I just don't see anything in him that would make me want to see him in the United shirt. I just don't think he developed as a footballer. Ben Chilwell, yeah, what you need is another left back constantly injured. I mean, the balls of brass neck of this. Here, we'd like Jadon Sancho. Let me find two scrappers here that we've thrown out. We'll throw him on the deal too. Oh, great.
Yeah.
You know, um,
When they have 45 young players with potential floating around, and those are the two, of course.
it sounds like a prisoner of war swap. No,
Yeah, it does.
you give me one of your hostages, and you can take two of us.
You know, the problem, and the problem with that is that the upside is only for them. Because as much as there is those issues with Chilwell and Raheem Sterling, Ben Chilwell is very injured all the time. Sancho's healthy, okay, and Raheem Sterling is getting older and age wise on the decline. There is a potential upside in Sancho because of his age and where he is, that he could still become a better player. Neither of those two are becoming better players. They're not going to become better, at this stage of where things are at in their career. So it's like, it's if they were gonna, there was talk of Nani Madueke wanting to leave beforehand, but then he goes, he scores a hat trick, so clearly that's off the table, right? They've got midfielders they want to move, like Chukwuemeka, I think. I may be pronouncing that wrong, but those are players you could take. But otherwise, it's like, what is this? What's the point of this offer?
But United shouldn't take anyone who's
Yeah.
offered in part exchange.
Yeah.
If you haven't identified a player's
Yeah,
result,
I would agree.
and that's not on your list, don't take anyone.
Just on principle, I
Yeah,
would
just
agree.
because
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think that's something they should do. But have you heard Maresca in these press conferences about his wingers? Can you imagine Jadon Sancho there after a week getting absolutely rinsed by Maresca? I mean, you heard what he said about Sterling, you heard what he said about Mudryk, yeah, and going. Interesting that he's getting away with this, by the way, because this was something that was a hanging offence for previous seasons. But okay, um,
But they did score what, 5 goals or 6 goals? So
yeah, but James, let's just talk about the Ange Postecoglou effect. People never learn. Right?
Yeah, no, I
He was
understand.
Chelsea on October, November.
Oh no, I don't. Yeah,
I mean, even Slot, you could see the look on, Trent Alexander's face, Alexander Arnold's face. These tests are going to come, right? I mean, I think it was Moyes' first game. They beat Swansea away and stuff. Everything looked rosy.
Yep.
And then, you start testing authority, and things are different. And I mean, it looks like.
But I mean, you might get away with it this 1 week, when you're winning, but it's not always going to be like that.
Yeah, and to be fair, they had Ipswich and Brentford. Those are games you would expect Liverpool to win.
Yep.
Same with City, they've had favourable fixtures. But yeah, look, Sancho, United obviously want him out, hasn't been in any of the first team squads for obvious reasons. I still think he will go.
He has asked to leave. He's asked to leave. And it's not like to everybody's credit, it's not like it was before. He's still in training. He's still with the squad. He's still taking part in everything. But he has asked to leave. And it seems like Juventus is probably a much more likely landing spot for everybody.
Yeah, that obviously accelerated after he wasn't in the first team squad for the first game.
Yep.
And as I said before, he's been playing in preseason like he's a guy that has no expectation of playing for United.
Spot on.
Yeah. I think they would like to get him out, and I think it'll be a loan with a buy option on it. Hannibal on his way out.
Yeah.
Right decision.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, for sure.
wasn't gonna play for United's first team. United have been quite ruthless in moving players on that really aren't going to be featuring for the first team. So he's going to go. Be interesting to see what happens with Ericsson, what have you, before the end of the window. But with McTominay going, Mabry going, Hannibal Mejbri going, um, is Ugarte enough?
I think it is. I think we talked about this last time about whether we think it would be. I think it is, for me, and not. I guess it depends on what you're qualifying, enough for the season. Like, what are we trying to accomplish? Because one of the dangers is that what I don't want to see United doing, and as to the example of the swap with Jadon Sancho, when you talk like Sterling or Chilwell, is if you bring those types of players in because they could like provide some numbers this season, but then you're stuck with them afterwards, and that's what you don't want to see United doing is stockpiling, ending up with more players than they have, ending up in the wages being too high, players not playing, things like that, because they kind of got an emergency in, or another player that they weren't really targeting in, just to make up the numbers because they're a little bit short. But I think Bruno, Mount, Kobe Mainu, Toby Collier, Casemiro, and Ugarte is enough. I think it is enough. I really do. I have no problem with that, especially when you look at all the players that we have in other positions. I think it's enough. I mean, I would still suggest that a fullback, if it was somehow possible, is still so much more desperately needed in terms of your positions and numbers than in the midfield. Even if you moved on Ericsson and McTominay, I think you have 6 players that could play, 2 of whom in Bruno and Ugarte literally never get injured. I mean, both of them have missed like 3 games in their entire career with injury. You have a lot of robust players. And so I think that that's okay. I think that really is enough. And if you ended up with extra money from that, pursue somebody. They've been looking at a left back, but haven't really had the money to do that in addition to everything else that's needed. If you get this big profitability from McTominay sale, could they go for it? Could you make an offer for a young fullback, that can actually take up the left side and potentially replace Luke Shaw in the future, in the next year or two, or even now, because we really don't know when Luke Shaw. I mean, Luke Shaw is supposed to be back after the international break, but for how long is that going to happen again? Unfortunately, that's so
Can't work for it.
unpredictable. I don't think you can operate like that. So I would rather say it's enough in the midfield for this season. Go buy a fullback. They like Herkes at Bournemouth for 30 million. Just buy him then. Just
So
get somebody in.
so far they brought in Xerxes, Euro, Delict, and
Mazraoui.
Maguire.
Yeah.
They've sold Mason Greenwood, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Willie Kambwala, Facundo Palestre, Alvaro, Danny Van de Beek, Amari Forson, Varane's going, Matty Martial's going, Brandon Williams. They've released Amrabat's going back, McTominay and Mejbri. We got into that. It's a lot.
Yeah. And then the crazy part about that is it's 8 players they didn't use out of that list that had actually like virtually no effect on last season, which is kind of
So
wild.
United's, I don't know because we'll have to see where Ugarte ends up, but I think it works out. They brought in just slightly over 100 million, and they will have
One
spent.
McTominay goes, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I think
Yep.
as of right now, pre-Ugarte, they've spent 140, so it's essentially a 40 million net spend this summer, which was rumored to be what the number was, right? Now, it's expected that with McTominay going, they will be able to bring in Ugarte, so it'll be probably about 80, 90 million net spend, somewhere around that.
Yeah.
Which I suppose in comparison to Brighton and Villa and what have you, it's quite modest.
Yeah. It's
You look.
also very profitable sales too when you look at it. McTominay being profit, Greenwood all profit. Wan-Bissaka, they may. I mean, all these youth, almost every single one. Well, all of them are profitable, and almost every single one of them is about 90% or better profit.
So
Quite interesting.
you would imagine financially the room would be there for a left back. To me, James, it's
Yeah,
something they have to do.
I think
If
so.
you look at the United have had a really good window, I will accept that. But to me, the when United started this window, there was two positions, in my opinion, that absolutely had to get addressed, and that was left back and defensive midfield. But we still haven't technically addressed either. Now, expect Ugarte will come, but left back, we're still not sure. And there's the thing, like, if Mazraoui's a left back, why has he played both games as a right back? You're
And that
muted.
was one of the things. Yeah, it was like it was supposedly that he could play on the left. That was even one of the things that came with the signing, but he's still playing on the right, and I still think it's kind of a problem.
Big problem
Um,
because who's the other right back?
yeah,
If Dallow's left back, that means you've got one right back.
yeah, I know. So either way, you're short if you don't sign somebody. Again, I understand that Luke Shaw's supposedly coming back after one game, but to me, it's a
Can you
bit of a fool's errand to rely on him.
can you think of
Unfortunately,
any footballer that's been equally as good at left back as they have at right back? I mean, they probably exist, but I can't think of them. Every
yeah,
player that has been exceptional in those positions have been out and out left backs, out and
hmm
out right backs.
yeah,
Dennis Irwin, Ashley Cole, players like that, out and out left backs. The best right back, same thing. Because very
yeah,
rarely did you get someone that's equally adept with using either foot. Very hard. It's hard to get left
yeah.
footers in general, but to get people that are good with their left as they are on their right. But so when you're playing, when you're an exceptional right back, but you're a decent left back, that's a big problem.
Yeah, it is. I think it is
So
because that left-footed thing is like just the angles, the being able to run it and take it wide. It's you just miss a whole facet of the game, especially in possession.
well,
It's a big
especially when
problem.
you're playing right footers on the left and left footers on the right, because they're cutting in narrow. So now you
Yeah,
need those fullbacks to overlap and put the ball in. I know Dallo put a decent ball in early for Ahmad that a match probably should have scored with. But we shall see.
yeah.
So in terms of any other outgoings, you see anything else happening? Lindelof's wife tweeting that thing. Here we go.
I don't know what that means. Lindelof had a small operation on something with his foot, and he's probably fine. He'll be back soon. Um, it seems like it's more likely he's just going to go for free next year. At this point in time, there's interest, but if those clubs that were interested in him have not made an offer yet, I don't know why they would in the last few days of the window because there's nothing holding it up. We know why it's taken time to get Ugarte. We know why it's taken time to get McTominay to Napoli because those clubs need to sell and they have all this stuff, but there's really no reason for the clubs that would be interested in Lindelof to not have made their move, and so it feels like that one's not going anywhere right now.
Mm.
Um, I think that's it. I wouldn't. I don't think it's like we just discussed on the fullback. I think beyond McTominay out, Mejbri out, because that was one of the main other ones they were looking at, and maybe Ericsson and then Ugarte in. That's probably it in terms of what's going to happen this window. Ugarte, they have essentially a fee agreement, but the sale of McTominay will allow them to structure it better rather than it being this loan obligation gets complicated. How do you structure it for FFP, PSR, and all of that? It can just be done now. And that all those things are being under discussion. But beyond that, there's nothing that's seemingly like ready, or I guess I would say, or like when you only have 3 days left to actually get done during this window.
Well, and you get a Ugarte in. You're still not going to start against Liverpool, no matter what.
Yeah.
Mason Mount possibly, according to Ten Hag, had a bit of a problem. Do we have any idea if there's any injury there?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything on that. I'd be slightly surprised. I thought he was fine at the end of the first half when he was moving. I had thought maybe it was just a little more coverage for why he made that change at halftime because it looked like it was desperately needed to get Xerxes on. So maybe it was just that. We've got. I guess we don't have training pictures yet, but because it'll be probably later or tomorrow. But I haven't heard anything about that. About anything there, and it hasn't really been much of a topic outside of that little comment. So hopefully nothing in that because
All right,
yeah,
well,
it
man.
doesn't.
Liverpool this weekend.
Yeah,
What's your feeling?
we somehow haven't lost to them at home. despite everything that's gone on in prior years. But I do think that Klopp played a lot into our hands and into the crowd and the energy by leaving himself so open in a lot of ways in the games that we played. And I think Slot probably doesn't make that mistake. I think this early in the season, it's going to be really tough for us because we're just not that good yet.
James, that can't
I'm
be an
hoping
excuse.
for it. Yeah, I know. I'm just facing reality. I could go. I'll go with like a 1-1 draw. I could see that.
I don't even think Ten Hag can draw this game, man.
I know. I understand.
I think that
We need a win.
I
We
think
need it
United will
bad.
win it. I think they'll win. I think they'll win it. I think that you know, Slot can't come out of coaching much for sure. And I think Salah might look like someone who's happy the Klopp is gone.
Mm.
But I still think they will hit problems. Once that few weeks in the season, they'll hit problems. I think United will win it. Look, there was still a lot of positives in the Brighton game. They still played really good football at times. There was a lot of things that I liked that I thought was much better than things I'd seen before. We're the two games that we've watched this season had really late goals that completely changed how we felt about what we watched. The Fulham game could have easily ended up, a draw, or United could have won that game comfortably. And so sometimes the result can overshadow things and blind you to positives and blind you to negatives. So, I still think that United do look a lot better than what they've done last season, but ultimately this will be determined by results. And let me just say this: I really want Ten Hag to work as any manager at United. I want him to work because that means United will be successful on the pitch. But there's no disguising the reality that this weekend Ten Hag's already in must-win territory for me.
Yeah, I really don't want it to be a wasted year. I'd like to see us win. I'd like to see us do well. I'd like to see this all work out. And there was a lot of positives that I took away from preseason and from a lot of the things that have been ongoing under Ten Hag. And I hope that turns around. I hope we can do it. I don't know what has to change to make that happen, but I think there does have to be something changing. I don't think we can keep doing what we're doing and just expect it to get better. I think there does have to be some adjustment to the way that we approach things. But I do think we have the players and the ability that if we make those adjustments to be very good still. So I'm hoping that this weekend will be the start. That would be great.
All right, folks, that sounds good, mate. I expect United to win this weekend. I have confidence they will. And I want to see Ten Hag celebrating and rubbing it in Arne Slot's face. I definitely think that'll be a
Would be
factor.
nice.
I definitely think that'll be a factor for Ten Hag too. Van Nistelrooy, Rene Haka, and I think for United, this is a bit of Ajax Feyenoord rivalry, and I definitely think that'll be a factor. And I expect Ten Hag will be pumped for this weekend, and United will get a win. And if they do get a win, Brighton will be forgotten about.
Indeed, that's true. The perfect game for that.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This is definitely. I will say one thing. I think that win against Liverpool in his first season was absolutely pivotal.
It was huge, yes.
And it's weird that the symmetry, that
you're right.
Break the first two games, Liverpool's third game at home, and it's sort of weird. And
yeah, it is. That's
really was what lifted United and
so Jadon Sancho to come on and get a winner, then you think again.
But they win this game, which I think they will, and hopefully that produces the same effect. All right, man, we'll leave it there.
Sure.
Thanks to all of you for downloading the podcast as always. We will be back again next week, hopefully talking about a win after the Liverpool game. I hope you're all good. Physical health, mental health is good. Much love, my friend.
Later. Have a good one.
Cheers, guys.